What's happening, everybody? Welcome back to the Coast to Coast podcast here on InsideCarolina.com. I am your host, Joey Powell. With me, as always, Relly Mac, Sherrell McMillan, West Coast Sean Moran. Gentlemen, Sean specifically, I'll let you go first since you're earlier than we all are. How you doing, man?
Doing much better after watching that second half. I was watching the first half. I was getting a little nervous about how this podcast was going to turn
You
out.
wanted to record this podcast at halftime, and I was firmly in the camp of saying no because we all knew that comeback was happening. Sherrell, how you feeling, man?
I'm good. The weather was amazing in North Carolina today. Kind of a false spring that we're getting.
Yeah, man.
For us big guys, putting on short sleeves the first time after the winter,
It's so
it's always
liberating.
it's a little. I'm kind of like feeling myself through, but yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, man. That head fake spring we had today was something to behold, but I will take it nonetheless. Hey, thanks to everybody for joining us. Thanks for listening. If you're viewing us on YouTube, thank you for being there. Make sure you take a second, rate and review. We love to get good reviews. Ben Sherman especially likes to see good reviews about us. If you want to talk about Sherrell's amazing wardrobe, if you want to talk about Sean's superb ceiling fan action that he's got going on there, feel free, but give us a good review. That helps bump us to the top of Podcast Nation's algorithms, and it helps us to get better feedback and better noticeability from advertisers and from search engines and stuff. So when I say leave us a review, please, it really helps. If you appreciate what we're doing, take 5 seconds, leave us a review. If you don't like what we're doing, take some time and tell us why it's not very good or what we should do better. You can always email us or shoot us messages on the Inside Carolina message boards. Comment to us that way. But just let us know. We want to make sure that what we're providing you is up to the standard that you have come to expect from Inside Carolina's content in general, but also from InsideCarolina.com's podcasts. With that, also want to give a big shout out to Johnny T-Shirt, the sponsors of this here show. We love Johnny T. I got a great Johnny T story I'll get to in just a little bit. Sherrell, worlds colliding. You'll like this Johnny T anecdote.
Okay.
But talk about that in just a few. Boys, let's get started. Before we get into the current UNC bipolarism, manic existence, whatever you want to call it. Sherrell, you've got a quick hitter about the end of the season for some UNC prospects and commitments.
Yeah, so UNT's two signees from the class of 2021 are both in state. DeMarco Dunn from Westover High School and then Dontre Styles from Kinston. And both of their seasons ended in the second round of the North Carolina High School Athletic Association playoffs. That was on Thursday night. Styles and Kinston lost to Reedsville, who actually has Breon Pass, who is an NC State signee. If North Carolina pursued, who would have been a UNC signee. But Pass is going to NC State. He was a two-sport athlete and trying to make up his mind between football and basketball. And then Dunn and Westover lost to Northern Guilford. So their high school careers are over. So kind of next stop for them is UNC. They will, if everything goes according to plan like it should, they will enroll in June. And then one of UNC's targets in 2022, Deontay Green, we've talked about a lot. He and Asheville Christian won a state championship for the Independent School Association, the 3A championship. They beat Gaston Christian in Gastonia, who's been all over the news the last couple of days because of that.
Hey, man, they're the gateway from Charlotte, and you can't really hate on the Gas House too much. Was LeVar Ball at that game?
I don't think he made that one.
Okay, never lost.
No, never lost.
All right. Well, we appreciate that update, and I'm thankful for you guys for staying in touch with that stuff because I know our listeners and our viewers appreciate it. All right. I really wish that I had a one of those magic 8 balls because I feel like that's probably just as effective of a tool in predicting this current UNC basketball team as anything else that we could come up with, because never in my life have I seen as much of a Jekyll and Hyde roller coaster of a week of one college basketball team as I saw last week between Louisville and then Marquette. But not to be outdone, this team decided to consolidate that into one 40-minute segment and do both of those things in one game against Florida State. So shout out to them for keeping us on our toes. And they're, as Greg Barnes said on the Inside Carolina Live radio show Saturday at 10 a.m., they are remarkably consistent in their inconsistency. And guys, I'm going to start off there. What in the sweet hell went on between Louisville, Marquette, first half Florida State, second half Florida State. Sean, you get the pleasure of answering that question first.
I mean, it'd be easier to explain if it had gone from Louisville straight to the second half of Florida State. I think that would have made a lot more sense instead
They're not
of
making it easy
Louisville.
on you. That's not an option. They're not going to
No.
make it easy on us. You're going to have to do some stretching, get a little yoga into you, get some flexibility, and then let's get some analysis.
Well, I did get some of that in today, so maybe that'll help answer the question. But I think it's almost like going back a few weeks when they came off the road win against Pittsburgh. And I think we were looking at the Clemson Duke game, and Clemson wasn't playing well at the time, and I think everybody was kind of overlooking Clemson a little bit, and all of a sudden Clemson came and just smacked him in the mouth. A little bit same even at the end of our podcast last week. I think we would have taken a 1-1 week, but I think we all were expecting a Marquette win, even though there are some warning signs about that game. But once again, they entered the game as a 9-point favorite, and after that first start or first basket by Armando, got dominated by a middle tier Big East team. And then you go into the Florida State game and you're wondering, are they going to win a game the rest of the year? But, it's frustrating in terms of some of their slow starts. It's frustrating watching them collapse all on a driver going to the basket and giving wide open threes. But then it was exhilarating watching Walker Kessler have the game of his life so far in that second half. So once again, I think it's a team, we've talked about it all year, that they have potential, but it's still a young team. There's still a lot of weaknesses, and they are able to put it together at times, but you're just not going to get it for 40 minutes. So you're going to have that up and down swing. So
you might even get it for 40 minutes, but you're not going to get it for 41.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's spot on. And Greg Barnes also mentioned something I didn't know until this weekend. UNC has not won 4 straight games this entire year, which would be a first in Carolina basketball history. And I know part of that is due to the fact that the first part of the season got so truncated and they did not have all of the cupcakes they usually get to round into form. Sherrell, was it that easy? I mean, is it just, let's be psycho? Is that how this team works? I've never seen anything like it. And you've watched this team for just about all of your natural born life, at least back to when Moses wore short pants. So how have you ever seen that sort of vacillation between good and god awful as you saw basically since last Saturday?
I don't think so. Not to exaggerate or anything, but UNC sent out game notes, and that first half was the 3rd lowest shooting percentage in a half in Smith Center history.
Sure.
So it literally was one of the worst halves as far as shooting is concerned in UNC history. And then you add 14 turnovers to that, and you can make an argument. The NC State game, I think, where they scored like 50 points at home a few years back, but in our lifetime, it was definitely one of the worst halves. I think that's not an opinion. That's fact based upon some of the stuff UNC sent out. And then the second half was one of the best. I think it kind of reminded me, the level of play wasn't that bad, but the Florida State game in '93 with the George Lynch dunk, that kind of, it harkens back to that. I know you did a podcast on that last year on the throwback. And I just didn't see it coming, man. Nobody did. There's no way. I mean, the live betting, it got to like minus 14 at one point. It was there in the first half. It seemed like they were done. And in my head, and I think talking to people, it was kind of like preparing, okay, like how do we, in my mind, for what we do at Inside Carolina, I was like, okay, the season's over now because they lost to Marquette in an embarrassing fashion. It looks like they're going to lose to Florida State in an embarrassing fashion. How do they pick up from this? And then within the first 4 minutes, the game is tied. And you're like, it's kind of like, what happened, So yeah, you have to first off, you have to give credit to Roy Williams because he takes a lot of shots in the media and with the fan base.
Wait. I was told that he was terrible, that he was washed up, he was old, he needed to be put out to pasture. That's what they told me. That's what I heard.
I won't say that some of the criticism wasn't deserved, but if you're gonna criticize people, then you need to praise them as well when they do well. So I think he showed whatever he did at halftime worked. So I think that's number one. And then as a team, they just settled down. And a lot of that is incumbent on the freshmen. We talked about entering the season, how North Carolina was going to play 5 and 6 freshmen all season. And I think it would be 6, but Puff is hurt. And when you have a team where freshmen are playing that many minutes and scoring, I think it was 62 of the 78 points, you're going to have this kind of massive inconsistency, especially when they're freshmen who aren't that, elite one and done top 5 types from their play on the court. When you have that, it's just like you said, it's going to vacillate between frustrating, between very good, between average and great. You'll just get kind of these variances in each game. And I don't think that's necessarily going to change, even with Syracuse and Duke, and then onto the ACC and NCAA tournament.
Couple of things. You talked about the scoring from the freshmen. It was the first time that all 4 of the double figure scores in the game for UNC had all been freshmen, like in the history of Carolina basketball ever. That was a curse nugget from after the game. And also to just, I'm glad you mentioned that 93 game, because in our group chat, after they scored those first 6 in the second half, I'm like, man, this could be a lot like another major comeback in the Smith Center against Florida State. But not even I am that big of a wise ass to say something like that. Nor am I, or I'm also too superstitious to mess with the juju and the atmosphere to be able to say something like that in case it did happen. Sherrell, you talked about what Roy Williams said at halftime. What did he say? You know the answer. Sean, you know the answer. Tell me what could Roy Williams have possibly said? And I know we heard his post-game comments and his post-game media availability. Any ideas as to what he may or may not have said aside from Walker Kessler, you're starting the second half? I'll go to you first, Sherrell.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm of the opinion that he probably didn't do a rah-rah speech. He probably didn't go in there and yell at people and throw a whole bunch of dadgums and, all these other isms that he throws out. I think he probably went in there and said, you guys aren't executing. Like, all you have to do is execute. Stop turning the ball over to the other team. Go out there and play. And I promise you'll come back and you have a chance to win this game. And I'm sure it was probably nothing more than that. Maybe there was a couple of choice words in there just to get his point across, but I think that's really all you have to say, because it wasn't like in the first half. It wasn't, I don't think necessarily, to me, it wasn't an effort issue. It's just that Florida State, especially defensively, Florida State was making sure they couldn't get the ball in the paint and daring UNC to shoot, and UNC was shooting and they weren't making anything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Garrison Brooks and Armando Bacot had 0 shots in the first half combined, 0 from your starting 4 and your starting 5. So the game plan worked for Florida State. And I think Carolina just executed a little bit better, maybe screened a little harder, maybe came off cuts a little harder and got the offense going and started getting up and down the court. And that opened everything up.
That's a great point. I mean, Florida State obviously came out right up in Carolina's guts. I mean, they were very aggressive on the ball, very aggressive in their denial of passes in the passing lanes. And I mentioned to Sean earlier, it would have helped if I appreciate the Tar Heels' recognition of fans in the arena, but they did not have to throw a pass to the fans every 2 possessions. I mean, I can't remember what the number was, but it was 15, 16 turnovers and 5 field goals in the first half. That is a recipe for disaster. Sean, what do you think Roy Williams may have said, or what do you think may have clicked for those guys in the second half? In addition to Florida, and again, Florida State started making some mistakes, which is partially due to the Tar Heels' defense becoming a little more plugged in. But Sean, what do you think? What do you think that Roy Williams may have said in the second half, or was there maybe a strategy change?
Well, I can imagine he wasn't pleased, but at the same time, they gave up that basket right at the end. They cut it to 10. Let Florida State go 1-on-1 and get it up to I think, what was it, 12 at the half. But even with 12 points with how poorly they had played was not insurmountable, but it did feel like that. The first half, you felt like Florida State was just on another level mentally in terms of how focused they were, both offensively and defensively. I remember even one possession, Florida State was at the free throw line shooting, and they were already, you could see them talking in terms of who they had, what the plan was. And you were just like, man, they're going to come out and they're not going to let their foot off the gas. And then the second half, obviously the Kessler being inserted in the lineup was a change. We can talk on slow starts, I'm sure, in a little bit, but I had to do a double take when I saw that. And then right off the bat, you had Caleb Love taking it to the basket and scoring. And all of a sudden, whether that focus had been there coming out of halftime or it just came after that basket, and all of a sudden, it was now UNC that was the more mentally engaged team. And instead of throwing a pass, it's hitting the guy, in the shins. You're hitting him where he needs it. You're making, for the most part, crisp passes. defensively, you guys are the aggressors, and all of a sudden it just changed. And I was concerned, what happened, these guys are playing great for the 5-6 minutes. What's going to happen when they start putting subs in? But sure enough, when the subs came in, they were able to keep up that energy and continue that for the 20 minutes. So I don't know, it was something that he said, but all of a sudden that change, change from the first half to the second half, just completely flipped the script and let UNC be the more aggressive team that was more mentally engaged.
Yeah, it's a great point. They actually were much more engaged, taking the ball right at Florida State and kind of going right at Florida State's chest a little bit. And I do think when you're the aggressor, as Florida State was in the first half, it does take the other team out of what it is that they want to do. All right, real quick, I'm going to hit this Johnny T-shirt story that I promised to tease everybody with. And then we'll let some of the national guys come in and run their ads. And then we're going to get into some specifics about yesterday and the season moving forward for what few games we have. But Sherrell, you're familiar with the Carolina Constable from Hope Mills, Bruce Armstrong, correct?
I am. He's represented me several times, actually.
So, well, likewise. So Bruce Armstrong's son, Michael, who is our age, listener of Inside Carolina Live, the radio show, won our Johnny T-shirt contest a while back. Yesterday, before the Florida State basketball game and the UNC versus UVA baseball game, they made a stop in somewhere on Franklin Street. Where do you think they went?
I think it was Johnny T-shirt.
They went a Johnny T-shirt. And I saw a picture on Facebook of Bruce wearing a really, really sharp Jordan, and I can't remember what the brand of it was, or the name of the jacket was bright Carolina blue, Jordan logo, UNC or interlocking NC on the other chest, black collar, black snap buttons on it. It was so slick, man. I mean, just absolutely oozing machismo, if I could drop a Razor Ramon reference. And I said to Mike, hey, man, your dad's jacket is flames. And he actually said to me, yeah, thanks. We used our Johnny T-shirt gift card and went in there and got some stuff for the kids. And Bruce picked that up while he was in there. So shout out to Bruce and Michael Armstrong. Also to our friends at Johnny T-shirt who are constantly hooking up people in the coast to coast / InsideCarolina.com universe. You can be on that list also. Maybe one day we'll be telling a story about you out there in listening land. Hit up Johnny T-shirt, JohnnyT-shirt.com. Baseball team just finished taking 2 of 3 from nationally ranked Virginia. They did drop the series finale today by 1, but Tar Heel baseball looking good. If you need your Tar Heel baseball gear, hit up JohnnyT-shirt.com. Great prices, amazing selection, quick shipping time. They're socially distancing too. If you want to stop in the store when you're in town, because now we can go back to games. Some people can go to games. If you're one of those people, stop into Johnny T-shirt like Bruce and Michael did. If you're an Inside Carolina premium subscriber, use your extra 10%. You'll be glad you did. Johnny T-shirt will appreciate your support, and we will appreciate you appreciating them. Right now, we'll take a quick break, let the national guys come in here and run some ads, and we'll be right back to talk a little bit more about specific players, some end-of-season breakdown, and where the Tar Heels go from here. Hang tight. We'll be right back. Appreciate you sticking around. Joey Powell here with Sherrell McMillan, Sean Moran on the Coast to Coast podcast from InsideCarolina.com. Just got done kind of starting to unravel what we thought was an unraveling of a Tar Heel basketball team. It turned out to be a really amazing 49-point second half for the Heels as they came back to knock off the number 1 team in the ACC, and a team that I feel like has really come on as a program in Florida State. Guys, some of the talk around the Tar Heels of the last couple of weeks has been, are they on the bubble? Are they off the bubble? I think a lot of that is clickbait. I think it's forced content. I think it's a lot of news sites putting certain people on and off the bubble to get clicks, to generate news. But with regard to the Tar Heels tournament hopes, something that really perplexes me, and I want to get each one of your thoughts on it, is the usage of the net as a metric by which teams are measured to get in and out of the tournament. And I don't know if it's just this year or if it's because the inequity in how many games have been played, or if it's just that I'm paying attention to it more this year because of the situation the Tar Heels are in. But I feel like the net as a metric is incredibly volatile. Here's an example. Tar Heels were whatever they were prior to, and I could do the math, but I was told there would be no math. The Tar Heels were whatever they were before the Marquette game after beating Louisville. Lost to Marquette, dropped 10 spots. Beat nationally ranked Florida State for a Q1 win and only moved up 1. Leaves them now at 42. Sean, why am I overthinking the net, or is it absolutely an incredibly volatile metric? And is it just something that's happening this year?
I might be the wrong one to ask because I rarely look at the net. Now, I'm on KenPom all the time, kind of going by that, which I think for the most part tracks similarly. But the net I try to reserve, especially you've been talking about Colgate as kind of a top 10 team early on in the net. So for the most part, don't put a whole lot of stock in it until later, which is probably right now. But I think in terms of, the against Louisville, they jumped. Well, I'm going to switch it a little bit, go to KenPom. They jumped 10 spots in KenPom just because of how efficient they were, both offensively and defensively. And then Marquette, once again, they dropped due to their lack of efficiency. And I think for Florida State, it was kind of right in between. It was a big win, but in terms of how they played, just due to how bad the first half was, it kind of evened everything out. But once again, I think when you're looking at the tournament, you now have a legit win in there, which we've talked about with the ACC has been hard with really Florida State and UVA for the most part being the only two quality wins. Louisville's a little bit lower, but now you finally have a legit win that you can carry, plus everything else that you've done throughout the year. So that's why that win was so important versus, in my mind, kind of watching the fluctuations.
Yeah. Sherrell, I'm going to come to you and a little different question. I think that unless matter of fact, let me change that. Sherrell, do you have strong thoughts about the net that you want to throw in here?
Not strong. I would just say I think KenPom is a little better because it measures the how, how you played. And I think that is a stronger measure over the course of the season to determine who is actually good. Because you can have a good record, but it doesn't mean necessarily that you're good. And you can have a bad record, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're bad. And so KenPom kind of fixes that. Whereas the net, I think every year there's a criticism about it in that there's always some random team who is like, I think you gave Colgate as an example, but like teams will start off, 11-1, and you'll have like 18-1 Clemson is number 2 in the net. And you're like, well, obviously they're not the number 2 team in the country because it's Clemson, and we kind of know what they're going to do. Every year they're going to start 12-1, and then they're going to lose 7 of 9 and be on the bubble.
Yep.
And so I think that's part of the issue with the net. I don't know everything that goes into it. I mean, I know people hated RPI, but I'd rather go back to RPI than net.
It was easy to understand.
Yeah, it was
nothing
easier.
else.
Right, it was easier to understand. And so I have no idea. I would guess maybe the formula, the algorithm just doesn't have enough information because maybe Carolina's at their 24th game, 23rd game. That's more like early February usually in a given season. So maybe it just doesn't have enough information to be accurate yet. But yeah, I'm not a fan of it as a metric. I'm like Sean. I kind of stay with KenPom and go from there.
All right, fair enough. I will get out of the math questions. I am going to throw some stats at you and then follow it up with just a general philosophical query if you guys want to play that game. Looking at last night's box score, Tar Heels shot 38% from the field, 21% at a rate of 5 of 23 from behind the arc. Did hit 90% of their free throws. Did rebound the ball exceptionally well, as always. 21 turnovers, and won the game against a ranked top 15 team. I can understand why Roy Williams said in his press conference on Friday that he was more perplexed or just unable to get a read on this team, I think was his quote. Talked with Greg yesterday on the radio show about how flummoxed Roy seems to be. And I don't think last night helped at all. Sherrell, what do you think is going on behind the scenes that Roy and the staff are doing to try to kind of figure these kids out or patch it or just make it work until they get as far as they can in the tournament? Because I've never seen him as he was on Friday when he was in a good mood and not directly after a loss. I've never seen him wringing his hands and just in sheer absolute despair of a loss of words than I saw him last Friday. And I would say last night's win, while it was great and he got number 900 and it was good to see the team fight back, I don't think he knows any more about this team than he did after the Marquette game. So how do you feel about that? Do you think there's something they might be doing to try to bridge that? Do you think some of the guys are starting to figure it out? I don't want to your thoughts you, but I'm going to your thoughts you. So have at it.
I think it goes back to the freshman thing. I mean, if you can give me a season where North Carolina relied this much under Roy Williams on freshmen, I'd be interested to hear it. Maybe, I guess 2005, the year after the championship, or 2005, 2006, to some degree. But that team still had David Noel, and it still had Rayshon Terry. There were still guys who had been there and played, major roles. And this team has that too, to be fair. But an all freshman backcourt again, who both of them have struggled at times, and I think it's just it's everything added together. It's not one particular thing that I think is causing this volatility. I think it is what we've talked about. It's lack of summer. It's COVID. It's being isolated in a hotel away from everybody else while you're on campus. It's not having the social life. It's missing practices. It's missing exhibition games. It's going 3 days without a game, then 7 days without a game, then 2 days without a game, then 12 days without a game. It's just there's never any flow to the season. And I think players naturally are, they kind of, they're like kid, I don't mean to sound patronizing, but they are like kids in some degree in that a schedule is really, really important for them, a
Preach.
regimen, in that, you practice on Wednesday, you're off Thursday, you practice on Friday, you have a game on Saturday, rinse, repeat. That regimen is good for them, and they thrive in it. And when you kind of remove that, I think that's part of it. And then, honestly, the team it's got some disparate parts in how it fits together. And that's something we've talked about really for the last year, in that kind of I would say 6 best players or so play like 2 positions. And then you have the other 3 where you're trying to figure out exactly, what to do. So I think all of that, it's just a combination of like 12 different things that I think makes this particular team so volatile. I will say, and me and you talked about it, in that other group chat the other day, in that they started the season with an identity of, okay, they're going to get down 17-2, but they're always going to come back. And it didn't seem like that was going to be the case against Florida State. But I think we've seen it enough throughout the season to know that they do have something in the team's DNA that allows them to keep fighting. So I think that's a positive, and that's something that Roy Williams can lean on. I don't think they've really quit this season. Even against Miami, as ugly and terrible as that game was, and as much as I never want to think about
Why
it,
you got to bring up old stuff, man?
or hear it again, they were down 9 late in that game and found a way to come back and win. So I think that's part of the identity. So I think that's something maybe that carries over. But to your point, I think he's frustrated just because, everything that's happened this past year has been frustrating. And I think that just manifests itself by their inconsistency on the court.
That's fair. Sean, any other thoughts of maybe why Roy Williams just hasn't been able to press the right button with this group, and how they can continue to grind for these last few weeks of the season?
Well, I mean, I think we were talking about the switch at halftime and having Kessler in, and once again, Sherrell was talking about how they get down in the first half, and I think that was, at least for me, one of the criticisms / things I'm trying to figure out. You look at their starting lineup, and outside of the Duke game, over the last 6-7 games, they're scoring 2 points, 4 points, 5 points, 6 points. Even when they scored 9 against Louisville, they're down 5 going into that first TV timeout. And it's hard. I mean, when you start off the game like that, sometimes you have the Florida State games, other times you have the Marquette game where you just dug yourself in too big of a hole, and you can't, and it's hard to, really get over that hump. So it's trying to figure out what is the right lineup, and what is the right buttons to push, because every game somebody is playing a little bit differently. I would like to see, Florida State, I think it was both halves, they had their starting 5. Leonard Hamilton didn't like what somebody was doing. A minute and a half, Scotty Barnes is going in. And I think that, the team can't go 5-6 minutes with the same guys just trying to figure out. There's enough guys on the bench that should be able to at least bring in that energy. Because once again, the energy they had in that second half was the energy and focus you would like to see. And you can quickly tell if the team has that right off the bat. And if they're not, get somebody else in there that's willing to hopefully at least bring the energy. I think a few things you're also seeing, from the freshman perspective, Walker Kessler, little by little, he's been coming along. A lot of the times he's been catching the ball in games leading up to this. And, his body hasn't been there in terms of just reaction time. And against Florida State, it finally, everything was clicking. And then Joey, going back to what you were talking about, the box score, you have 20 offensive rebounds. So once again, that's the one thing that we've known they've been able to do, and that's been shut off against Clemson and UVA. They've been in big trouble, but they were able to dominate the boards, and that kind of offset a lot of the poor shooting. And then the final thing was their defense. Marquette, they were scrambling almost every possession, getting beat off the dribble, leading to a wide open three. Florida State is not, they're strong, they're big, they're athletic, but they're not a take you off the dribble type of team, besides for maybe Raekwon Gray. So you have a top 15 team in the country from the 3-point line, and they only shot, I think they shot 5 of 17, so below 30%. So a lot of things going on, but I think with the team they have, there just needs to be a little quicker on the trigger finger in terms of if things aren't working out. There's plenty of guys on the bench to at least try it out a little quicker than what we've been seeing.
Yeah, thanks for calling out Raekwon Gray. Love his game. I think he's almost a unicorn, but I think he's a very, very fun player to watch in the sense that his skill set is just so good in so many different ways that make him really hard to guard. But I was going to ask next about the emergence of Walker Kessler this past week. And rather than kind of have you share your thoughts again, I'll kick it over to Rel. Sherrell, I think I know your answer here, but is it just that Walker Kessler's figuring it out, or is it that they finally decided to unleash the Kraken?
Yeah, I think it's opportunity more than anything. If you look at his numbers, the last 5 games, I think so. Let me rephrase. The first game of the season, I believe, against UNLV, he played 14 minutes, and that was his season high until the last stretch of games. In the last 5 games, it's another UNC note. He set or tied a career high consecutively over the last 5 games. And I don't think it's a coincidence that his minutes, he was 12, 12, 12, 8, and then 24 against Florida State. I think he is a player, and Roy Williams talked about this in the post game, who's very hard on himself. And so the only way for him to really grow, I think, is to just let him play. And not everybody's like that. Some guys, they need to be able to sit and watch, and they need to be able to study, and then they can come in and they're very surgical. I think he's a guy who you need to let him play. You need to let him play pretty much as possible. It's something we talked about on here. Like they had to keep getting him minutes because a performance like this, I think, was maybe not quite like this, but a really good performance, I think, was inevitable just because the kid is so talented. So I think it's incumbent on them to still make sure that he gets minutes and he gets in a flow. He doesn't have to play 24 minutes every single game, but just let him play 6 or 7 minutes straight, because I think he has to get in a lather. There are certain guys, I think, if you go back to football, Marquis Williams was somebody who in practice, they said he was like not good at all. But then you get him out on the field and he gets a couple hits in him. Even in the beginning of games, like go back to that South Carolina game in 2015, disastrous on drive, and he gets hit a little bit and he's good the rest of the game. So I think maybe Kessler has a little bit of that in him. He's got to feel it. He's got to sweat. He's got to get some contact, get a couple of shots up, and then, his game gets better that way. So to me, I don't think he's changed anything. I don't think it's really development or anything like that. I think it's just opportunity more than anything.
And yeah, shout out to whoever said this on Twitter. I can't remember who it was, or I would give them credit here, but I did not anticipate Walker Kessler putting up the Rasheed Wallace stat line of 20 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 blocks, with also a steal and an assist and just some other stuff. I mean, the kid's really everywhere, and I think he's obviously grown into his body a little bit and figured out the speed of the game. According, I want to give a hat tip to Dewey Burke for saying on the post game last night on the Inside Carolina podcast. It is good to see him do that. I think his per 40 numbers are off the charts. To your point earlier about how much he was getting used, and even in those limited minutes, he was showing himself. Somebody that's been absolutely panned off and on, and rightfully or unrightfully, however you want to carry that, this season has been Leaky Black, and I came as close to being critical of him on the radio show as I have all year. yesterday. He was talking about, the fact that he'd had, I think, 5 points over the last 4 games, or flipped that or something like that. Sean, we saw more of a leaky black stat line last night in 6, 7, and 4 points, rebounds, and assists. What does it take for him to kind of get engaged like that? Because I'll be honest, that pass he threw to the hit ahead on the break to Kessler for the one-step dunk was probably, I don't know that I've seen a pass like that from anybody on UNC's team this year. And so, I mean, he shows the flashes, and they're rare, but he shows the flashes of what he could possibly be. What does it take for him to continue to give just a small, steady level of effort and stats, little stats in each one of the lines? How can that happen? What do you think it takes for Leaky to be able to do that?
That's a great question. And once again, I think that's the thing with him is you have a starter that only, as you mentioned, only scored 5 points and had, X amount of rebounds over a handful of games. And for any team, you can't just have a guy who's running up and down the floor. It's perfectly fine if he's not, the go-to scoring type of guy. Now, I think both Sherrell and I were watching the same highlight videos this week of UNC going back in the 2010s. And, it's nice to have a Harrison Barnes on the wing, a guy dunking, hitting threes. But, if Leaky's getting 20 minutes, he needs, in the second half, he was grabbing those one-handed rebounds. He was, getting switched on to Raekwon Gray and, muscling him up. He was playing MJ Walker. He struggles. The Marquette guys could take him off the dribble. He's going to struggle if he's playing a real quick, athletic guy. But once again, Florida State was kind of a good matchup where he could bother them on the wings. And even after that first Caleb Love basket, you could see his energy pick up, and you could see him giving high fives. Picking up on defense almost half court, and just playing a lot harder. I don't know what the switch is. Because once again, do you expect him to score 20 a game? But at least be a threat on the glass, both offensively and defensively. And offensively, just look to attack every now and then. I think are the biggest things. So it was nice to see that pass he had was reminiscent of Kendall Marshall throwing to Tyler Zeller almost, of the beating everybody down. And I think that's one thing Kessler also does add is he's the best on the team at running the floor. I mean, I think there was a few possessions where, Sharp runs really hard, but him and Sharp started at the same time, and, Kessler got him by a few feet. So once again, it's just being aggressive. And you can go back to the Louisville game where he had, one was, I think it was an assist, and the other was that missed shot he had at the end of the first half, where at least he was aggressive, pushing the ball and
engaged.
getting into the paint. And that goes back to if he's not doing that right off the bat, sit him and get into him a little bit and then bring him back in. But you just can't have, especially with 2 games left in the regular season and then single elimination, you can't have that going for more than 2 minutes at a time, or else they got to come out. But we saw what happens when he is engaged, and hopefully that can continue going forward in March.
All right, guys. Before we put a bow on this, Tar Heels at Syracuse Monday night, 7:00 on ESPN. I'm sure ESPN will find a way to get Corey Alexander on our television again so we can find out who he's been sliding into the DMs with this week, because that's what we all care about. I think a lot of folks may be worried about how this team is shooting and the inconsistency around their shooting as well. Is it that much different in a place like Syracuse that is a giant dome and they're not going to have any fans? I mean, is it going to affect the game that much, do you think, Sherrell?
Joey Fresh, I'm not sure.
Oh, wow.
I was like, is he going to get the joke?
Wow. We're done here. We're going to go ahead and just stop recording now, because that's it.
Shout outs to
That's
Corey
my
Alexander.
guy. That's my guy.
Shout outs to Sean Moran, everybody in the Coast to Coast podcast out there doing your thing. I think it is different shooting there. Last year when they went up there, it was one of the best shooting performances of their season.
Yep.
Cole Anthony, maybe his best probably second best game as a Carolina player. Brandon Robinson, played well. So I think it's really just more about moving the ball than it is being in the cavernous building, especially, without fans. and it's just really about the Syracuse defense more than anything. I
Right.
don't think the shooting, I think that kind of stuff is a little bit overblown. Obviously, I'm not a college ready shooter or professional shooter, but I think I think that's a little overblown. I do think that North Carolina's going to have to shoot better than they did last time against Syracuse. Now they beat Syracuse, but
That's
very
because they killed
similar.
them on the offensive glass.
You're right, right. Very similar to Saturday. Saturday, I think they were 5 for 23 from three, and against Syracuse, they were 5 for 24. So right around 20%. But the key to the game, like you said, was the offensive rebounds. They had 24, and they had 18 more shots. So if they do that again, yeah, obviously, I think they'll win. I think Leaky, to me, is the key for this game. You can kind of see him maybe in that high post area, kind of directing traffic. I think he's had good games against Syracuse. I think he was around 7 assists, 7 or 8 assists in the first game. So if he can be there, kind of doing the high low thing, and even if he takes, I think I'm comfortable with him taking that 14, 15-foot free throw line extended jumper.
Yeah.
I think he hits it pretty decently.
I'm not okay
So
with the 1 foot on the 3-point line shot, but I'm
right,
very much
right.
okay with the elbow corner type. Yeah, that's fine.
Right, right. So even if he can do that, I think that'll help a ton. But with this team, you just don't know. You would think just like heading into Marquette, coming off a really huge win, everybody's feeling good. They're playing well, and then they laid an egg. So hopefully, I think what Roy Williams and his staff can do is say, "All right, we've been in this situation before. Last week we were in this situation, and you came out and you played one of your worst games of the season. So remember that, and just try and come out here and be engaged and play hard and don't allow that to happen again. What happened against Marquette?
Well, take your logic elsewhere because this team is not here for it. Sean, any thoughts on how you see the Syracuse game playing out? I like Sherrell's point about seeing Leaky maybe play that Theo Pinson type role of slashing to the logo just below the free throw line and trying to facilitate work in the wing corners on the baseline to carve up that zone. How do you feel like the Tar Heels should probably approach this game against Syracuse on Monday night?
Yeah, I mean, one, I think it's one that people are probably looking and say, oh, that should be a win, even though it's pretty much a toss up with a 1 point spread. But
What
once
does
again,
KenPom say, by the way? I'm sorry to step on you. What's KenPom got that one at? I know Vegas says Tar Heels minus one.
1 point,
Yeah.
76, 75 UNC.
Right.
So, once again, a toss up, even though UNC is the better team. But once again, that the game in the Dean Dome was tighter than it probably should have been. The positive thing, similar to what we said pre-Syracuse last time, is the turnovers should hopefully be reduced since the pressure is not extending outwards. You're going to hopefully have the offensive rebounding ability there. As Sherrell mentioned, Leaky, this is a game he can do well in terms of, where he's cutting and finding little open spots. But then, going to the freshman guards, we haven't talked a whole lot about today. Caleb Love, 6 turnovers. Some of them were just, the most frustrating things you've ever seen. But at the same time, I feel pretty confident when he's taking his little dribble jump shot from 15 to 18. I thought there was a few times he could have done that yesterday instead of driving to the basket. And he did do a great job in terms of, sometimes they had to back all out, and he was able to get into the teeth of the defense. So I think even though statistically he's still not performing that well, I think he has been playing better. And then you have RJ Davis, who we talked about last week, as kind of a guy, he hit those threes against Louisville, and now he has back-to-back double-digit performances. So if RJ can kind of come off the bench and provide a little spark offensively while reducing the turnovers, I think that'll be helpful. So once again, it's a game I think talent-wise they should win, but you never know with the team, and ideally you're not going into that Duke game, hoping that you don't go 0-2 for the week.
Gotcha.
And with the big men, I think in this game, they should have some kind of punitive situation when they get back, that if you have a situation where you can dunk and you don't, that's 20 up downs, or it's it's 94 feet, whatever, dunk the ball. I think that's really important for these UNC bigs. They're big enough, they're strong enough, and I think too many times they are trying to I guess finish through contact by laying it up, but just go and try to dunk the ball. Good things are going to happen. you either get fouled or, most of the time you're going to make the dunk. So go up and be physical with it. And to that point, segueing, just a shout out from the Florida State game to Garrison Brooks. I think it's very easy for someone like him, a senior, his career is kind of flashing before him, the end of it. ACC preseason player of the year. It'd been very easy in that second half to say, you know what? I'm the senior guy. I'm the leader. I'm going to go out and take my shots, and I'm going to try and will this team to victory. You know what he did? He stepped aside because he deferred and stepped aside because he knew Walker Kessler had it going. He knew that Dayron Sharp was in there, and Armando Bacot had a pretty good second half. So he became a complimentary player, and I think that is really, really big for your program when the guy who's the face of the program entering the season is willing and team first enough to even consider doing that. So he played. He didn't have huge numbers. I think he had 4 or 5 points and 6 rebounds. Not huge,
but he didn't hurt the team.
But he didn't hurt the team, and he made both of his free throws. So, in a situation like that, when somebody has it going, it's good to see, especially a senior, be willing to just go to that guy and let them cook, for lack of a better phrase.
And you guys have said all year, this team does lack some serious bona fide leadership. And while that may not be the rah-rah, chest thumping type of leader that a lot of fans may expect, everything you just shared does show leadership. And I think that's great that you brought that up and shared that about Garrison. Sean, anything before we go?
No, I mean, I think on the Garrison front, I thought he did pretty well defensively, especially in the second half, bothering Gray. And once again, he's always put in a tough position, basically being a center that's now guarding, for the most part, a stretch 4 in a lot of these games. And he's been able to slide his feet pretty well. And even when they were able to get a step on him, the fact you have Kessler in there with his monster wingspan and how he uses his arms to kind of protect the rim, I thought definitely helped out in the second half in terms of their defensive performance. But it will be interesting to see how the game goes Monday, if they can use this and build on it, or if it's, they're scoring 4 points to start and 29 points in the first half and what have you. But once again, with how Syracuse plays, they should be able to create opportunities for themselves, and hopefully come out with a victory.
And we're recording this on Sunday, so if UNC schedules a game in the interim, that's why we didn't mention it.
Just yes. FYI. It's not that we're hiding anything from you folks. We got nothing to hide. We're all fully disclosed or unclothed or whatever, unclothed, unclad. We're not hiding anything from you guys. I don't know. I may or may not be wearing pants, but that's for another day. All right, boys. As always, appreciate you guys joining us. And you know what? If I didn't have pants, I could go get some from Johnny T-Shirt. Much love to Johnny T-Shirt for sponsoring the show. Yes, indeed. We appreciate them being there for us. Appreciate all you guys listening. As always, thank you to Sean Moran, Sherrell McMillan for joining us. Thank everyone for tuning in and checking us out. If you have not subscribed, rate, review us, all that good stuff. If you're not a premium Inside Carolina subscriber, we're judging you a little bit. I'm going to judge you just a little bit. You should probably fix that. But we appreciate you being here. Hope you have a great week. We will check you next time on InsideCarolina.com's Coast to Coast podcast. Late.